Welcome to the very first HTML tutorial in this HTML series. Today we're going to talk about the very fundamentals, the basics of HTML. HTML is the cornerstone of web development. Without HTML, you literally won't have a web page. And that is because HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language that marks up a web page. So when a browser loads a page, it reads the markup in HTML and decides how the page is to be constructed. In fact, it doesn't make a decision, it actually just reads that, and that is pretty much the blueprint of how a web page is to be displayed. So in the markup, you can designate certain what they're called tags to define structural elements, how and layouts of a web page, as well as its content. So for example, you could have headings, you could have paragraphs. Now the hypertext part of it is the fact that you can link documents, HTML documents together, and you use something called a hyperlink. So you would create what's called an A tag, and that A tag will allow you to create a clickable link from one hypertext markup language document to another, and vice versa, and so forth. So it's essentially a blueprint. Okay, it is how the web page is constructed, and essentially, strictly speaking, it's not actually a programming language, especially in the same sense as something like Python or PHP or JavaScript, because it is just a way of laying out a page. There's no control flows here. There's no if statements. There's no switch statements. It's not object orientated at all. It is quite literally just how the web page is to be displayed, how it's to be rendered, how the browser interprets it as a web page. But like I said, it's the cornerstone of web development. I haven't done a HTML set of tutorials yet, so here we go. I mean, this is one of many tutorials that I'm going to be doing in this series. Today, though, we're going to focus on the fundamentals, the very basics of HTML, how we can actually start constructing HTML, creating our own web pages. But before I get into that, I just want to mention something. Just going through my notes here, and I just want to talk about the background of HTML. So HTML was first conceived in 1991 by Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Around that time, there was version 2.0 came out. Now version 2.0, I'm going to say version 2.0 because HTML itself is a specification, okay? And that specification is decided by a group of people, or organization called the W3C. Okay, this organization writes this guideline. This you can look it up on the net. Just go to w3c.org, and it lays out how HTML should be used. And the reason why we have this organization is that you don't want to have certain browsers going off and doing their own thing. You don't want certain browsers to go off and say, I'm going to display my paragraphs in a completely different way to another browser. You need to have some level of consistency, some consistency throughout the board, and therefore we have W3C. So for every iteration of versioning, the browsers get together with the board and they decide on, or they agree on certain specifications, and then certain browsers adopt, the versions or the types, the specifications within the version, and then as the later versions of those browsers come out, more things get accepted as they're written into the browsers and so forth. So like I said, back in the 1990s we had version 2. Then in 1995 we had version 4. Now we're on version 5, which came out in, I think it was 2012. That does sound like a long time ago, but HTML5 is kind of like the de facto. Now I'm not going to talk any more about previous versions of HTML. There's really no point, because what's the point in talking about a technology that is no longer used? Because all the modern day browsers now support HTML5. Okay, so let's actually start writing some code, shall we? So on the right hand side here we have a browser, which is Safari, and on the left hand side we have a text editor, and this text editor that I'm using is NetBeans, but you can use whatever you want. You could use Notepad, for example. Just ensure that the file ends with an extension of .html. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is tell the browser what version of HTML that we're using. And we use something called a doc type, a document type, to do so. Now, in the previous versions of HTML, you do this in a completely different way. So if for any crazy reason you're still using an earlier version of HTML, say HTML4, for example, then do research, Google that, and find out how you do it. I'm only focusing on HTML5 here, and I will be throughout this tutorial series. So we do this by creating a doc type, which is done like so: doc type HTML, and that basically means, that it is going to be a HTML5 document. Now, in this document, we need to define certain tags, and the tags are what create the page. They're what the browser uses to decide or to read and then render the page out. And within these tags, you have the content. So, for example, when you're creating a paragraph, you would have a P tag at the start as well as at the end of the paragraph. And the browser would know that that is a paragraph tag. That markup that marks up the paragraph tag. But we need to first open the HTML tag, and we do this like so, and we need to close the HTML tag like that. Now, opening is literally these greater than, less than symbols, and then the tag name. And then closing them is again the greater than, less than symbols, but with this / at the start. So that's the start of the HTML document, and that's the end of the HTML document. So anything under here is not HTML. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually open up what's called the body. Now, the body is what is displayed on the page. Okay, so we have a body. There's also a head tag, but I'll get into that in a different video, perhaps another tutorial. We're only worried about the body at the moment. Now, what's the body tag is the very first HTML tag that you can actually see in a web inspector, or it's the second tag, I should say, because you can see the HTML, but you can actually stylize the HTML tag, the body tag, and anything within that as well. So let's say we want to create a heading, and we do H1 like so. So we're opening and closing that, and we're just going to do this is a test. And we're going to save that. We're going to go to the browsers. Oops, sorry, that's my magic mouse. And refresh this page, and we can see that we have this is a test. Now, why did I use a H1? What does H1 actually mean? Well, H1 is that stands for heading. H stands for heading, and 1 means that it's the first heading. Okay, it doesn't mean that you can't have any more H1 tags. You can certainly do that. Let's do this again. So underneath we're going to have this is a test, and this is a test again. Save that, refresh this, and we can see that we have 2 H1 tags here. But the difference really between the different headings is that you're saying to the browser that this heading has more has more priority perhaps than the other headings. So when I say other headings, you can actually have quite a few. So if I did H, and then we can see 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you can go on further than that. And essentially H1 has more priority than H2, and that has more priority than H3, and so forth. And what I mean by priority, it's essentially the, visually, stylistically, it has, the H1 is bigger than a H2 tag. H2 tag is bigger than a H3 tag, and so forth. But it also has different meanings for things like SEO, so search engine optimization, where H1 is seen as a tag which has more importance than a H2 tag. So, for example, you could create a blog post in WordPress, right, where the template of that blog post has a H1 tag, and the H1 tag is used to as the title of the blog article, right? Whereas the H2 tag could be used for something completely different. It could be used as a way of subheading that article. So for example, we could do something like this, H2, and I'm actually going to give this a little bit more meaning. So instead of this is a test, we're going to do article title, and in here we're going to do author name, and we're just going to remove that. And if I was to, whoops, we didn't close that off, save that, and then refresh here, we will be able to see that we now have, can you see the difference in the style? We have, apart from not being able to spell article, there we go. There we are. So we have article title as the first heading, and then the second heading here, which is author name. And we could do like so, just to give it a little bit more. Okay, so if this was, let's do HTML tutorial 1, and then we can create a H2 heading, which is just the basics. There we go. So we have the heading, HTML tutorial 1, and then the subtitle, the basics. Now after this, we actually want to create some paragraphs. And we do that using the P tag. So we do a P tag, and then we close that off. And I'm just going to do this tutorial, I don't know, talks about the basics of HTML. Save. And can you see that we have a completely different style now, because this is a paragraph, and we can create several paragraphs if we wanted to. So we can copy that and paste that in, and we have another one down here, but we're just going to remove that for now. Another thing that I wish to show you is something called it's bullet pointed lists. Okay, and there are a couple of bullet pointed lists. We'll get into some further down the line, but the simplest one is the unordered list. So these are called ULs and LIs, and basically a UL is a way of defining that you're going to have a list, and then each list item is then within an LI list item. UL, unordered list, LI, list item. So we can do, this tutorial talks about the basics of HTML and covers. And within the P tag, we're going to have, or sorry, not within the P tag, whoops, we're going to have UL, close UL, but within the UL, we're going to have a series of LIs. So here we're going to have what HTML means, LI how to create a web page, and then the second one I'm going to do the basics of markup, and save that. Now if we were to refresh the page here, we will be able to see a bullet pointed list like so. So this tutorial talks about the basics of HTML and covers, and then these 3 bullet pointed lists, and these 3 bullet pointed lists come from the LIs bits here, and it's in an unordered list. The unordered list basically means that it's bullet pointed. If we were to change this to be something else, as so for example, if it was an ordered list and 3 guesses for what the tag is for ordered list. If unordered list is UL, ordered list is OL. And save that and refresh the page. We can see that we have 1, 2, and 3. Now we didn't actually type 1, 2, and 3. We didn't actually go 1 and so forth. And if I was to refresh the page, we'll have 1.1. Let's just remove that. It's because the browser knows that this is an ordered list, and so every list item in here needs to be incremented. Let's save that and put that back. I'm actually going to change that back to an ordered list. Now notice my browser, it breaks here. If I was to save that, you've got a UL and you're closing it with OL. If I was to refresh, it does change it back to an unordered list, but notice that it is broken. So we do need to fix that, and that can have detrimental effects to other markup alongside it. So we need to change that. Now, as you can imagine, these HTML files can get quite lengthy, and what tends to happen is you would create a series of HTML templates, and perhaps your framework of choice, maybe if it's I don't know, Symfony or Laravel, or just, you know, Smart FTP or anything like that. So sorry, Smart EFTP, will be able to construct snippets of HTML that you can use like templates. We won't get into that at the moment. This is basically a very raw, fundamental example of how we can construct our very first web page using markup language. If you've got any questions, then please leave them in the comment section below. Do follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is PFWD. If you've got any questions, like I said, bung them in the comment section below. Thanks again, and I will see you again next time. Thank you. Bye. Welcome to another HTML tutorial. Today we're going to look at A tags. A tags are how we can link web pages together. So when a browser sees an A tag in the markup in HTML, it knows that it is a link. Now these links can be links between the pages, between, you know, the websites, between web pages, or to external pages themselves. We're also going to look at attributes within the A tag as well. Attributes is something that I haven't covered yet in the HTML markup. Now what I'm going to do is create a second HTML page, and we're going to call it tutorial 2. So as you can see here, we've created I've created a HTML file, and it's completely blank, HTML2. And if I was to go back to the index page, this is where we left off last time, which is what we can see here rendered out. So what I want to do, first of all, just for ease, is copy that, go into the second page, the tutorial 2, and paste that in. And I'm going to just change a few things here. Let's just change that to be tutorial 2, and I'm going to also change that to be how to link to other pages. And I'm just going to give it some text. So this tutorial demonstrates, how to link to other pages using A tags. Save that. And we're going to remove this unordered list like so. And if I was to just to scroll over here, change that to be tutorial 2, and we can see that we've quickly created that page. So how to link to other pages. This tutorial demonstrates how to link to other pages using A tags. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, for quickness, is just create another paragraph tag, and in that paragraph tag I'm going to nest inside this an A tag, and this A tag we'll open it like so, and we're going to have go to tutorial 1 like so. Now we need to give this A tag a series of attributes, or a specific attribute called the href attribute, and this attribute will hold the value of the file that we wish to link to, in this case the very first tutorial, which is called index.html. Okay, so let's do that now. So attributes go within the tag declaration, so href, and we're going to equal that to a string, and that string will have index.html, and save that. Okay, that looks good. Let's render that out, and there we go. See, we've got this new paragraph tag, and in that paragraph tag we have a nested A tag, and in that A tag we have the attribute of index.html, go to tutorial 1. Now without that, without this, it will completely fail. If I was to save that, refresh the page, can you see that the underline has been removed? If I was to put it back, we can now see that it's back again, and it's also changed color. Now this is basically, this means that the browser has realized that this is an A tag and has rendered it as a link. And if I was to click that, we now go back to the first tutorial. And likewise, if I was to put that in here, so we go back into the index, come on, whoops, bugger, thank you. Right, if we went back in here and we pasted that in, and we did go to tutorial 2, and we changed that to be tutorial 2, and save that, refresh this page, and we can see that go to tutorial 2, go to tutorial 1, and so forth. Now this is very good for creating menus, so your header navigation or your links. And normally what happens is that this actually goes into, if we're creating a sidebar, for example, a unordered list, and we would have li, and in here we would have this tag here, go to tutorial 2. And I'm just going to do tutorial 2, save that. Yeah, just double check that looks good. Refresh the page, and there we go. And I've actually nested the A tag within the li. So what we've got here is essentially 3 nests. So the UL is nested within the body. In fact, 4 nests, because the UL is in the body is within the HTML, the A is within the li, which is inside the UL. And if we had lots and lots of tutorials, which I hope we will have in the future, we can have lots and lots of unordered list items, li items here, each having their own A tag, like so. Okay, this is a very quick tutorial on linking internal pages together. Now, as I've demonstrated, this link refreshes the actual page. But what happens if you want to keep the page that you currently are on existing? What happens if, for example, you want to create a new tab? Well, you would do that by designating a new attribute called target. Like so, target is equal to, and then again it's a string, and then inside here we would do underscore blank. Now what that means is when the browser renders this page, it sees that this is an A tag. It sees that that is the link, the href, that's the link in which it's going to. But this target basically means that it goes to a new tab, a blank tab, _blank. Let's save that. Refresh this page, double check, yeah, go to tutorial 2, I'm on the right one, and hit that. Now notice that we've actually created a second tab here in the browser. You see that? So we've clicked on go to tutorial 2, and that's actually created a new tab like so. If we were to remove the target, it would just go like normal. If I was to refresh that and hit that, then we would just change the page. Now what we can do is link to external resources, so we can actually link to external pages. Let's say, for example, we wanted to go to my Twitter profile. So let's just create one here. Let's just do another. I'm going to do another li. So follow PFWD on Twitter. Yeah, that's correct. And just by memory, I'm going to try and remember the URL. So www.twitter.com/PFWD. Now I want to have this going to a new page because instead of a new tab, instead of refreshing this page, I don't want to take the user away from this website that I'm creating, and therefore I would do target equals _blank, like so. Okay, so we've got this A tag here. It's got the target of _blank. This is the href. And the text is follow PFWD on Twitter. Let's just save that and refresh this page. We should have whoops, I need to go back here. Yeah, there we go. So we've got these two links here. Tutorial 2 will just refresh this page going back to the second tutorial, and this one here should open up a new page like it does, and then loads up the PFWD Twitter profile like that. Okay, let's just go back, and you can see, like I mentioned before, this is very useful for creating menus and things. So you would have like a sidebar of links and that go to various places on your website, as well as other websites, other resources, and so forth. Okay, so this is a very basic tutorial of linking in HTML. If you found it useful, then do like the page, like the video, as well as share it around if you think others might find it useful too. If you've got any comments or questions, then leave them in the comment section below, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. Do subscribe, because there'll be many more tutorials like this to come, as well as the Friday web chats. Thanks again for watching, and I shall see you again soon. Thank you. Bye. Hello and welcome to the third part of the HTML tutorial series. Today we're going to look at images and how we can add an image to a web page. Now, an image tag has several attributes that we'll be discussing and going through in detail, two of which are the width and height. Now, the width and height can be both the percentage as well as pixels. These are measurements of the dimensions of the image. So we can actually override the dimensions of the existing image, and we'll be talking about those in more detail as we go along. The other attribute that we're going to talk about is the source of the image. Now, the image source can either be an external source, so that's an image on a separate website somewhere else on the internet, as well as an internal source, so that's internally to the website that you're working on. So that goes through the directories. But okay, let's just jump into it. So The first thing I'm going to do is just copy HTML tutorial 2 into the third tutorial file. Let's save that now, change a couple of bits around. So HTML tutorial 3, how to add images to web pages. That's fine. Oops, spelled that wrong. Let's just remove this part here. And this tutorial demonstrates how to embed images and a talk on image attributes. And there's going to be more attributes that I won't discuss in this video because it's going to be too long, so I'm going to just do on some image attributes. Let's just save that, and I'm going to just go to the web browser just to ensure that this is working. That's fine. So we've got HTML tutorial 3, how to add images to web pages. This tutorial demonstrates how to embed images and a talk on some image attributes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to add an image to this web page, and we're going to put it in between this paragraph tag and this unordered list. And to do so, we need to use the img tag. So img stands for image in HTML. So let's go here. That's in between the paragraph and the unordered list, and we do img like so. Now the image tag is a self-closing tag, which means we can do a backslash and then the closing tag symbol. Let's save that. Now obviously we haven't actually added the source of the image here, so if I was to refresh this page now, it will look exactly the same, but there's a little bit of gap ready for the image to be added. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to add an attribute that represents the source of the image. And like I said, this can be an external source or this can be an internal source. For now though, we're just going to focus on an internal image to this website. Now I have an image called logo.png. Now that is in the current working directory of this tutorial. So this tutorial file, tutorial3.html, is in the same directory as this logo.png. Now that's very important, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just close this file now, and to reference the source we use something called src. So that's the attribute name, src, and we're going to equal that to be logo.png. Let's save this now and go back into the browser, refresh the page, and we can see that we have this logo now, this image that has been added. As you can see, it's conforming to the original image dimensions. So that's the original height and width of this image, which goes from there to here and then down like so. But we can change this on the fly in the HTML, so we can actually expand and stretch this image if we need to. Let's do that now. Let's change the image width. So width is equal to, and I'm going to remove this, or I'm going to scale this down to be 200. So that's 200 pixels. Let's save this. Go back into the browser, refresh the page. We can see that it's now constrained to 200 pixels in width. Notice the height has changed because we haven't defined the height. The height ratio gets automatically calculated based on its width. Likewise, if we were to change the height but not the width, it would do the same. So let's change that to be height and save that. I'm going to change that to be 100 instead, just to be a little bit more adventurous. Let's refresh the page, and we can see that the width has also changed because we've enforced that the height is set to 100, and therefore the width dimension gets changed to in the same ratio as the original image. But we can do something a little bit crazy. We can actually change both the width and the height and stretch and crop the, or not crop, stretch and compact the image on the fly as well. Let's do that. So height of 100, I'm going to do width of, if I spell that correctly, that'd be great. Width of, I'm going to do 500, like so. Refresh the page, and we can see that we've stretched this image out. It's now 500 pixels, but we're enforcing the height to be 100, and we can do it the other way. So we can do height of 10, for instance, and width. Actually, no, I'll do width of 10. Whoops. Height of 300. Let's save that and refresh the page, and as you can see, we've completely distorted this image now. This image is totally unreadable, but it's conforming to the rules that we've put into the image tag. So regardless that the image itself has a set of dimensions, the HTML has overridden those dimensions. And likewise, we can change this to be, instead of pixels, we can use percentages. So let's do width here of 100%. Whoops, like so. And I'm just going to put height of 200. Save that. Refresh the page, and we can see that it's now spanning to be the whole width of the page, and we're forcing the height as well. Let's just remove those, put them back to the original. So in fact, I'm just going to do width is 200, because that will move the height to be the correct height to width, like so. Let's just refresh to bring it back to where it was. Okay, so another thing that we can do is, like I said before, we can change the source so it references an external file. Let's do that now. So what I'm going to do is just go to my blog, and I'm going to take this image here. So what I'm going to do is just open up the developer tools, which is somewhere on here. Show web inspector, there we go. And you might not be able to see this because this is off of the page. Let's just detach that so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So what I need is this image here, and if I do edit the attribute, I can now copy this attribute. So that's the src tag that we've added in the previous tutorial. If I copied that, closed this down, going back to this tutorial, let's just move that a little bit this way so you can see it. What I can do is change that to be, whoops, and paste that in. So that's actually referencing a external image. So that's the Gravatar image that I've got. Let's save this and go into here, refresh this page, and you can see that we've now changed the image to be this external image. It's a bit blurry, so what I'm going to do is just change the width to be 96. I think that's probably the best width. Let's save that. Refresh the page, and we can see that it's changed the width to be 96, which makes it look a little bit more clearer. I'm going to just remove the width so it conforms to its original height and width. I think it is 96 anyway. Yeah, it is. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is also add what's called an alt tag. Now, an alt tag is used by search engines to find the alternative text. So in some cases where the image doesn't actually load, perhaps you're linking to an external image and the image gets removed, then this piece of text is the alternative representation of the image. It's also used in things like screen readers as well. So it has an accessibility benefit too. Also, this is, like I said, it's used by search engines, so it has a very good SEO impact as well to your website. So for example, if you've got a website that is full of images, maybe it's a portfolio website, maybe it's an art website, and you are demonstrating or you're showing off your art, your images, then, or it could be even a product catalog, then do add some alt tags because they are picked up by search engines as well. Let's do this now. So let's let's add an alt tag to this. So alt is equal to, and we're just going to do Peter Fisher. Let's save that. Now, this isn't actually going to do anything on the at the moment because we have the image that's already in place. So if I was to save that, refresh the page, then nothing has actually changed because the image has been found. However, what I can do is demonstrate a failing image. So let's say this is, instead of gravatar.com, it's .com.x, because it's not going to work. Now that image is not going to work because the source is totally broken. I've just put a .x in front of the .com, which doesn't exist. Let's save that, refresh the page, and notice it's got this question mark symbol in, like so. But if I was to view the source of this this page and have a look at that section here, we can see that it has this alt tag. Now in certain browsers, this alt tag will be shown instead of this question mark, which is useful for, like I said, with screen readers, and it will also be picked up by image searches as well. So the SEO crawling bots will be looking for the alt tags too. Let's, however, though, put it back to how it was, and all the way back to the start. So logo.png, save that, refresh the page. Okay, so that is a quick tutorial on HTML images, how to add images, a discussion on the source, external sources and internal sources, as well as changing the dimensions, the height and the width using percentages as well as pixels, and a brief explanation to alt tags, why to use them and how to use them. Okay, if you found this tutorial helpful, then please do give it a thumbs up. If you've got any comments or questions or queries, do put them in the comment section below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Subscribe to get the next tutorials coming along, as well as the web chats I do every week. Thanks again for watching, and I shall see you again soon. Thank you. Bye. Welcome to the fourth part of the HTML tutorial series. Today we're going to look at how we can format the text within a paragraph, let's say, because there's certain tags that we can use to change the look and feel of the text within the paragraphs. Okay, so let's get into it. So what I've done is I've created a blank tutorial4.html file here, and this is the browser on the right hand side. What I'm going to do is just jump into the third tutorial. This is where we left off last time. That was looking at images and so forth, and I'm just going to change the content. So HTML tutorial 4, how to format text within HTML, and I'm going to just change this paragraph here. So it's this tutorial demonstrates how to alter the text within HTML. Okay, right, now what I'm going to do is just remove the contents of this paragraph. I'm going to leave these bits in here. Let's save that. Now let's refresh the page and see what we have. Okay, so what we can do is change the look and feel of some of these tags, and we can make these bold, we can change the italics, we can emphasize them and so forth. At the moment, this is how it is by default. Let's go and change some bits and pieces in here. Let's say we want to make a word within this paragraph more important than the other words, more come across more stronger, and there is a HTML markup we can use, which is strong. And basically what this is doing is it's telling the browser when it's rendering this page that the contents of this tag, of the strong tag, has more importance over the other tags, and therefore it becomes bold in typeface. Let's save that and refresh the page, and there we go. See, this tutorial demonstrates how to alter text in HTML. The word tutorial here is in bold, and that's because we have this strong, it's wrapped around these strong tags. Now another thing we can do is emphasize some text within this this paragraph, and we do that by using the EM tag. Now previously we were using the I tag, and that basically makes it into italics. Let's go and change the word excuse me, alter, or I tell you what, let's use HTML. Let's do EM. Like so. Let's save that now, and let's refresh the page. Okay, so now we have HTML in italics. It's been emphasized, that's what the EM stands for, and we have the tutorial in bold. Now other things we can do, we could perhaps if we're reviewing this content, we might want to strike through some text. Let's say we want to strike through the word alter, and we use the markup, which is strike, oops, like that, and then we close that off here and save that. Now what that's going to do is it should add a strike through over the word alter. And let's go and add some text here. Let's instead of use the word alter, let's just use the word change, and perhaps we want to ensure that the word change replaces the word alter. Maybe if we're reviewing this document, and in doing that we could use the U markup, and U is underline. Okay, so let's refresh this, and now we can see that we have an underlined change. Okay, so that's a couple of ways to change the way the text looks and feels within the paragraph. But this line of text is getting pretty long. What happens if you've got some text that is already pre-formatted and you want to keep the formatting of that text? Let's do an example. So P to open up paragraph, and I'm just going to have, this is a long paragraph. Blah blah blah. Long bit of text. All right. Okay, let's just save that and refresh to make sure it's there. And let's go and copy that again and put this in a second time. Let's change this from P to a tag called pre. Now pre is pre-formatted text. Now on the off, you'll notice that the font has actually changed. Let's save that and run that. Whoops. There we go. You'll see that this has actually changed in font. It's actually a completely different font to how it is up there. Also notice that we have this huge gap here. Now that is because we have this big gap like so. If I was to put all this up in one line like that and save this, it becomes in line. So what's happened there? Well, pre-formatted text is essentially basically what it sounds like. It is text that is already formatted, and the usual rules of creating text within paragraphs are removed when using pre-formatted text. Notice that this here has some space here, and what I can do is just move this along all the way up here and save that. Because it's in the P tags, it adheres to the rules of the P tag, and therefore it keeps putting it on the left hand side. However, if we were to space this out in the same manner, let's move this to here and then down like that. So it's the same setup as the P tag. It behaves very differently. Let's refresh the page, because it's adopting the spaces that I've put in here, the tabs that I've put in here, and that is because it's seeing this as formatted. Now we can go a bit further. We can also just put in some blank lines and save that and refresh, and we now have these blank lines like so. If I was to do that with this, so this is a, and then a space, move that all the way over here, is a long bit of text. There we go. So I'm just making sure it's the same setup as this pre-tag. Let's save that and refresh. Nothing happens, and the reason why is because it is in the paragraph. HTML or the browser sees anything in the paragraph as a section of text in its own right, and therefore any internal formatting that has happened that isn't within these defined markup tags get removed. So this actually returns a single line of text, whereas this is broken up because it's pre-formatted. It's within the pre-formatted tags. This is very useful for things like writing code, or just writing examples of things that you need to adopt your pre-formatted text to it. Excuse me. Okay, what I'm going to do just to tidy up is I'm going to just save this here, and I'm going to go into the index file, and I'm just going to copy that and put in tutorial 4 here, and I'm going to copy that line. I'm going to save that, and we're going to paste it in here, and also in the third one, because I just want to keep this reference of links of the pages. I'll also do it on the fourth one too, and save that. So now we should refresh the page, and we can go back to tutorial 3, tutorial 2 and 4, and so on. Okay, so in the next tutorial we're going to look at some other tags. We can actually look at the table tag and how we can create tables, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions or comments, then do let me know. Put them in the comment section below. Like this video if you found it helpful, and share it around if you think others might do so as well. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @PFWD. Thanks again for watching, and I shall see you again next time. Ta. Welcome to the 5th HTML5 tutorial in this basic HTML5 series. Today we're going to look at tables, how we can create a table, and how we can display a table in HTML. Now, tables in HTML require lots of nested tags, so I'll go through this slowly and methodically. Hopefully at the end of it we'll have some nice tables to show. Now, what I've done is I've created a tutorial5.html file here, and the browser is pointing to that file. There's nothing in it at the moment. What I'm going to do is just jump to, let's just use the fourth one. This is the tutorial that we did before about formatting text. Let's copy that, put that in to the 5th file. Let's save that, change that to be 5. Oops, not 45, blimey. 5, and this is going to be how to create tables in HTML, and I'm going to remove this paragraph and this pre-tag, and here I'm just going to type in this tutorial demonstrates how to create tables in HTML, and we're going to save that. Okay, so let's begin. Let's refresh this to see what we've got. Now what we want to do is create a table between this paragraph and this unordered list here, and we start by using the table tag, which is like so. Now the table tag requires some nested table rows. Essentially what you do is you construct your table rows, and then within those table rows you create some table cells, and there are 2 different types of table cells that you can add. The first is table heading, and then the second is just a normal table cell. The table heading has some different style properties to the other table cells, and I'll just demonstrate that now. So the first thing we need to do is to create our table rows, and we do that using tr, like so. And then within the table row, so we're creating the header here. We're creating the first row of table cells, which would be the header. So the table headers are th like that. And I'm going to just put them on a single line for now. And we're just going to have header 1. And we're going to have three headers. 1, 2, and 3. We'll just change this to 2, and we'll change that to 3. Save that. Now let's refresh this and see what happens already. Okay, so we've got this row of 3 columns. So 3 table columns: header 1, header 2, and header 3. This is a row. These are the columns, the table headers. So what we can do is create our second row and also create table cells for each of these headers that correspond to each of these headers. So we would create another table row with another 3 table cells. So a tr, td, and then we do. I'm going to just do cell 1, and what I'll do, just for ease of space, I'm just going to put these up in a single row. It doesn't really matter if it's not on a single row or doubled. Cell 1, cell 2, and cell 3. So what we've done is we've created a second table row underneath the header, and we've added 3 table cells that correspond to these table headings. Let's just refresh the page, and now we can see that we have these 3 like so. Now by default the dimensions of this table is set automatically, and basically it's using the width of the table cells to work out the width of how wide the table needs to be. So can you see when I'm dragging my mouse across this, I can actually show you the gaps between the table cells. But what we can do is we can give some arguments to the table itself to change the dimensions, the width and the height of the actual table. Let's do that now. So let's do width is equal to 100%, and we're going to save that. We're going to refresh the page, and can you see now that the table itself has 100% width that spans right the way across the page. Same with these table headers like that. Can you see that there's this block here and then this block here? What's happening is that the browser is automatically calculating that we've got three columns, and therefore it needs to be divided up in such a way that that the balance of widths are equal on each of these three things. Now let's just remove that for example. For now, because I just want to demonstrate something else. Let's just refresh that and bring it back to how it was. Let's say, for example, we want to change one of these things. At the moment, the table headers have the same number of characters, and therefore it's going to be the same width. But let's say we want to change one of these. Let's say, let's give it a little bit of context. Let's say this is a shopping cart. Let's say we have a list of products, yeah, and then we have a list of costs, perhaps. And then perhaps we have a list of delivery charge. Oops, and save that. Let's change this to be PHP book. Let's give that a cost of 15 or 25 for today's inflation, and also have that as £2.50. Okay, save that and refresh the page. Let's see how the widths have changed because we've changed the number of characters in each one of these. Being that the one in the middle has the smallest width, will be the smallest width. Let's refresh the page and notice that we have products, and then we have the PHP book underneath, but the delivery charge itself is the longest, and also the cell underneath matches the width of the table header here. Let's go and add another row just to give it a little bit more context. So let's move this back here. We're going to have JavaScript course. It's going to have 0 delivery, but it's going to be 750 for the course. And let's save that. So now we have a second row underneath, and even though that's 0, the actual table cell is the same width as that. And then if I was to change this again to be a width of, let's say, 100%, then it works that out as before. And notice that the table headers are bold and centered, and that's because the THs, have a different set of styles, predefined styles that these TDs do. Okay, what else can we do with the widths? Well, we can actually define the widths per table header. So let's say that this is, we're going to remove the width here, and let's say that we want products, to have a width of 50%. So what will happen here is that becomes 50%. We're defining this to be 50%, and then these will be calculated on the fly. So let's save that and refresh the page. Now we can see that this is 50% width of the whole thing. And if I was to change that to be width of 100%, let's save that and refresh the page, then we can see that the products has 50% of the 100% width of the table. So the table is 100% of the page, products is 50%. Just to demonstrate, we can change that to be, say, 75%, and these will get even smaller, like so. You notice that? And what we've done here is because we've enforced this to be 75%, and because the delivery charge itself is too long, it's wrapped itself around. Let's bring that back down to 50. Okay, some other things that I want to demonstrate. I want to talk about how we can change the amount of table columns in a row. So at the moment everything is 3 columns, so we have products, costs, and delivery charges. But what happens if, for instance, there is 2 columns instead of 3 columns? How do we ensure that one column perhaps spans over multiple columns? Well, that is possible. Let's give you an example. Let's create a new table row right at the bottom, and let's say that this here is a total. And what we want to do is only have 2. We want 2 table columns. So this one here, TD, the total, and the cost. But if I was to refresh the page and save that, we don't have a row here at all. A column here at all, but we do have here, and we do have here. Now we can ensure that this amount goes here instead of here, and we do that by spanning the first table across 2 columns. So we can merge, a bit like in a spreadsheet, where we can say that this table column spans across 2 columns, and we use something called an attribute called col span. and essentially that is saying that we are spanning across multiple columns, and in this case we want to span across 2. So even though we have 2 columns here, so we've got the TD and the TD here, the total and the price, we're saying that this TD spans across 2 columns. So let's save that and refresh. And what we've done is, can you see that this column here is spanning straight across over to this, so across the products and the costs table as well, and therefore this one goes into the delivery charge. Okay, another thing that we can do is we can fiddle around with, say, the borders. So at the moment, borders, we have no borders, but we can add an argument here. So we can do border is equal to 1. So 1 pixel. Let's save that and refresh the page. And notice that we now have borders enabled. And this is a better demonstration, I suppose, of the spanning of the table columns. So the total is spanning across these 2. Okay, another thing that we can do is define the cell padding and the cell spacing. Now the cell spacing, let's work on the spacing first. Let's change cell spacing, and we're going to do is equal to 10. Let's save that. And what that's doing is it's creating spacing between each of these cells. So we're not actually changing, the border is still set to 1, and if I was to do that to 0 and refresh, we can see that we have huge amounts of spacing in between. Okay, so if you're designing a table, then perhaps look at cell spacing as a way of adding space between the cells. Another thing we can do is something called cell padding. Let's add that in now. Cell, and we're just going to also add that to 10. Let's refresh this. Okay, now a cell padding essentially puts padding around the contents of the cells, and it's probably better displayed if I was to change that to be 1 and refresh. So we can see that we have, you see that we've got some spacing in between each section. Sorry, in between each of all the content within the cells. If I was to change that to be 0 to just show you what the padding looks like without the spacing, then there we go. So, okay, there's a lot more that we can do with tables, and I will delve into tables in far more depth in the future tutorials, such as how we can highlight alternative rows and other bits and pieces like that, when we're looking at the styling and perhaps adding some JavaScript to this as well. And when I talk about CSS and all that, we're not there yet, but we're slowly getting there. So look out for those tutorials if you want to learn some more advanced features of creating HTML tables. But for now, I'm going to leave it like that. So if you found this useful, then do give it a thumbs up, share it around. Maybe others might find it useful too. If you've got any comments or questions, if you want more information about how to create tables, or if you've got any comments on future videos, then or what I should do with future videos, then let me know. Put them in the comment section below. Thanks again for subscribing, and keep an eye out for future videos. Thanks again, and I shall see you again soon. Thank you. Bye. Hello and welcome to the 6th part of the HTML tutorial series. Today we're going to look at tables and advanced table features, one of which is nesting in tables. So that's where you have a table within a table. Now this was very useful back in the HTML4 days, where things like CSS and style sheets and even JavaScript wasn't really useful enough, as useful as it is today at least, for designing and laying out and positioning elements on the page. So back in the day, tables were nested within each other, and that allowed designers to control where certain items of the page, certain elements on the page were. So for example, if you had a border around your page, you could use a table, and you could use the table columns as a way of creating that border. Also, you could, because you could nest data within itself, you were able to construct very complicated layouts, and you could use the percentages to adjust the height and the width and so forth. So it allowed designers to create pretty half decent looking web pages back then. Now we've got CSS and JavaScript. It's far easier and far better to design web pages. But I mean, essentially what was going on was that people were using tables in the wrong way. Tables were supposed to just display tabular data, but often designers used them to design and lay out the page. But saying that, nested tables still have their place today, especially if you've got a lot of complicated data and you wish to isolate certain elements within your template, within your table, and you want to have almost like a subset in your tabular data. So let's get into it. Let's create some nested tables. So what I'm going to do is copy the tutorial 5. So we're going to copy that and put it into tutorial 6. If you haven't seen tutorial 5 yet, I do recommend checking that out because it'll give you some more information that will prove helpful for this one. So I'm going to change some bits and pieces. So HTML tutorial 6 instead of 5, how to nest tables in HTML, and here I'm going to just change this description to this tutorial demonstrates how to nest tables in HTML. That'll do. Okay, let's just save that and bring up Safari again and refresh this page. We should now have this page. Yep, that's good. It's pretty much the same as what was in the 5th tutorial. I've just changed the descriptions and the title here. So what we're going to do is we're going to nest a table within one of these table cells. In fact, we're just going to use this one, for instance. We're going to remove the word PHP book, and we're going to actually have a separate table, a sub table within this primary table. So let's do that. Let's go back into here. Let's remove where it says products. Oh, sorry, here where it says PHP book. And what we're going to do is just create a new table within that. So table, and then close that off. Create our table row and close that off too. And we need a th because of the table header. And in here we're going to just have the word test header, like so. And let's just bring that down a wee bit so we can see more information. Next thing I'm going to do is, like before, is create another table row, and in that I'm going to have a bunch of TDs. Well, for now I'll just have one. So TD, so that's the table cell, and in here I'm going to just have test cell, like that. Let's save that and just double check that. Yep, that looks good. So let's open up Safari again and refresh the page. So we've got this this new table. It doesn't actually look like a table at the moment because it just looks like we've got one line here and then perhaps a line break and another one. But actually, if I was to copy that or highlight the whole thing, you can see that there is two table cells here. This is the table header and the table cell itself. So as before, because we haven't defined the width, it's just going to use the width of whatever the content is. So we can actually change that. Let's go back into here and change the table width. So let's do width is equal to, and we're going to do 50%. I'm going to save that and go back into here, refresh this, and can you see that we've got a 50% of the products bit here has been consumed by this table, this sub table, and I can change that to be 100%, and it will consume all of that as well. Let's go back into Safari, refresh the page, and we can see that it's consumed all of it. Now the reason why this here has there's some space here is because there is space in all of these tables, and that is due to the cell padding. Now the cell padding is set on the parent table, this base table here. Let's go back into here, change the cell padding from 10. We're going to make that 0. Save that. Go back into Safari, refresh the page, and it's all butted up to the end like that. Okay, let's put in some borders in the sub table. So border is equal to 1. Save that. Okay, so we have a border in the sub table. Now notice as I'm doing this, it's not actually inheriting the attributes of the parent table, which is something that CSS does, because CSS is a cascading style sheet. I'll get into CSS in a lot more detail down the road, but it's one thing that this doesn't do, and that is inherit the properties of the base table, which is a good thing. Let's go back into here. Let's use an attribute that we haven't actually used before, and that is changing the background color. So what we can do is do BG color, and it's Americanized, so its color is spelled COLOR, and we can either use a hexadecimal code, or we can actually use an RGBA, or we could use just a word that represents the color. So for example, red, and let's save that. Go back into Safari, refresh the page, and you can see everything has turned red. Now what we can do, because by default the table color is transparent, which means it doesn't actually have a color, we can change this one here, and we can change the sub table to be a different color to the color of the parent table. And let's try that now. Let's change this one to be a BG color of, I don't know, let's change that to be blue, like so. And go back into here, and we can see now it's all blue. So that's blue and that's red. Okay, and if I was to change, if I was to remove this one from red and go back into here, refresh the page, then this is only blue. That has gone back to transparent, which is white. And it's transparent because if I was to change the color of the background of the actual page, which again is something that I will get into in the CSS tutorials down the line, then this table would also change its color to the background as well. In fact, it's not actually changing the table's background because the background is transparent. So whatever the color is or the images behind this table will also be shown through. Okay, so that was a quick tutorial really on nesting tables. So that's where you have a table within a table. Like I said, this was very useful back in the HTML4 days, but you shouldn't be creating nesting tables for layouts anymore. CSS is the way to go, but there are still times where nesting tables is pretty useful, especially if you've got a lot of data and you want to break down some of that data into smaller individual subsets. Perhaps though, I would suggest that if you were in having to do that, then perhaps look at creating another page with a subset of data in that, and perhaps use links to and fro those pages. Otherwise, you see, the code will be getting quite complicated because you can nest tables as many times as you want. And if you look here, the nesting level here is pretty deep, and it'll get deeper the further you go down, because the thing is, tables aren't just one level deep, they're not just 2 level deep, but they're often 3 or 4 levels deep. So for example, table, tr, th. So if you're nesting a new table, then you're automatically adding 3 other additional layers of tags or tag nesting, as it's called. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, but if you've got any questions, then do let me know. Subscribe to get the next tutorials and the web chats every week. Like the video if you found it helpful, and do share it and share it around if you think others might do as well. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you. Bye. Hello and welcome to the 7th part of the HTML tutorial series. Today we're going to look at some advanced semantics of a HTML table. There are 3 elements that I've left out in my previous HTML table tutorials. These are used to identify the correct portions of a table, and they're used by screen readers for accessibility and other things like that. So when a screen reader is reading the contents of your web page, it uses these 3 elements to identify the correct areas of the table. These are the table headers, the table footers, as well as the table body. So T head for the table header, T body for the body, as well as T foot for the footer of the table. Let's get into it. Let's write some code. I'm going to copy tutorial 6 into tutorial 7. Let's save that, and let's change a couple of bits. So HTML tutorial 7, how to structure a table in HTML. And this tutorial demonstrates table structures in HTML and a talk on table semantics, like so. Okay, now this table that we've got here that I've copied from the previous tutorial has a nested table inside. We're going to remove that for now, and we're going to just change this to be PHP course. Let me bring that up to a single row, a single line, just to give us some more room. Let's save that now, and let's go into the browser, which is here, and refresh the page, and we can see that we have this table for us already created. Now let's talk about this table and how it's semantically created. So we have 4 table rows here. We have a row here, row, and a row, and within these rows we have 3 columns, and on the last row we actually have 2 columns. It's been used, this one here has a col span that spans 2 columns, but we haven't actually written anything that can identify the actual portions that make up this table. So when a screen reader reads this table, it doesn't know what is the header, what is the footer, and what is the body of the table. So for example, we would assume that this would be the table heading, we would assume that this is the table body, and we would assume that this is the table foot. But because we haven't actually put in those semantic elements, the screen readers don't know this, and so we need to add those elements to the code. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's go back into the code and have a look at what we've got. So we have these TRs, 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 and a TR there. That makes the table rows, and within each table row we have at least 2 or 3 table columns. So that's a column, that's a column, that's a column, and on the last table row we have 2 columns here. This one has a col span of 2. Okay, so the table header, the T head, can go right at the top here. So we have T head, and like with all tags, we open it and we close it as well. Whoops, let's put that in here. So closing the T head. Let's save that and move some of these out. So we have table header straight into the table, the table straight into the table header, and then we have a single row within this table header which has these 3 columns, these 3 THs. Let's save that. I'm going to just move this up a little bit so you can see. Okay, so the next thing we can do is designate the portion of the table which will be the table body, and the table body in this case has 2 table rows, so this one and this one. Remember, this one down here is the footer of the table, so we don't have to worry about that too much at the moment. So what we can do is tBody, and we're going to close that off like so. Let's save that and bring these into line. Whoops, like so. So we have the table, then we have the table head, and then we have the table body. The table head has 1 row, the table body has 2 rows. Okay, now the last row here will be our table foot. So that is tFoot, like so. Whoops. And save that. Let's bring those in line like the others. So now you can see that we have designated 3, or we've identified the 3 portions that make up the table. So we have the table tag in here. Let's show you that a little bit more. We have the table head, the table body, and the table foot. But notice if we save this and we go back to the browser, refresh the page, we actually haven't done anything visually changing to the table. We've just added those structural rules, these semantic rules to the code. So basically the point I want to make is some code that you write will not actually change the visual effects of the HTML page, but they're used by the screen readers, the things that actually read the screen, when the screen readers actually read the elements of the page, they can say that this is the table header, this is the table body, and this is the table foot. Very important for accessibility. So this is a brief demonstration and a brief talk of the semantics of that make up a table. If you've got any comments or questions, do put them in the comment section below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you found this video helpful, then do like the video, do share it around if you think others might find it helpful too. Subscribe to pick up the next tutorials and the web chats that I do each week. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye.